going on, everybody? Jack here with another episode of The Big and Bold. Today's episode is pretty straightforward. I believe the Big Ten has the best collection of running backs in all of college football this year. Now, this isn't too unrealistic for the Big Ten Conference. They have a pretty long history of great running backs. But the disparity this season between the Big Ten and the rest of these college football conferences in terms of their collection of running backs for their teams, I think it's pretty vast this season. But I don't just want to tell you that, I want to show you. So let's jump right into it. I actually kind of came across this assessment accidentally when I was doing research for a different video I have coming up, where I was looking at the top players by conference, and I came to the Big Ten, and I realized, wow, there are a lot of good running backs this season in the Big Ten. If this video picks up some steam, I have an idea for a few other position groups that I think are looking really good for other conferences. So we'll see how that goes. But again, thank you for listening, everybody. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already. I really appreciate it. And let's jump right into the video. And let's start with a pair of freshmen that were prolific last season for these two teams. And the first one's going to be TreVeyon Henderson, former five-star out of the state of Virginia. At Ohio State, had over 1,200 yards and 15 touchdowns on the ground as a freshman. Guy's only 18 years old. Averaged 6.8 yards per carry and had some huge performances for the Buckeyes. He popped in their third game of the year against Tulsa, 277 yards and 3 touchdowns. And I get it, Tulsa isn't the best team in college football, but they're not the worst either. So the fact that he absolutely destroyed Tulsa was really impressive to see in only his third game as a college athlete. Broke for over 100 yards against Maryland, 150 yards against Penn State. Penn State's defense was pretty good last season. The kid is legit, and he just looks like he's going to fall in line with some of the other great Ohio State running backs we've seen recently. Ezekiel Elliott, Carlos Hyde, J.K. Dobbins. List goes on. Now TreVeyon Henderson is a part of that list. Physical freak. He is on some future Heisman watch list for the next 2 seasons, being a part of the best offense in the Big Ten this year. And he's going to be a huge component of their team the following year as well, when presumably guys like Jackson Smith-Njigba and C.J. Stroud go off to the NFL. But the other freshman I want to talk about is Braylon Allen, one of my favorite players for the Big Ten this season. Another player who had a really similar year to TreVeyon Henderson, actually, but he had over 1,200 yards and 12 touchdowns, 6.8 yards per carry as a freshman at Wisconsin. But the crazy thing is it took Wisconsin a while to really get him on the field. The first month of the season, he really wasn't all that utilized. But when they started giving him the football, it was obvious that he was a special player. He just started ripping off 100-yard games. 130 yards against Illinois, 140 yards, 2 scores against Purdue, 173 yards and 3 touchdowns against Northwestern, 228 yards and 3 touchdowns against Nebraska as an 18-year-old freshman. The kid is physically intimidating. He's like 6'2", 230 almost. 4-star out of high school. Braylon Allen is a terrifying running back, and he looks like the next best, he looks like the next great running back at Wisconsin. And for years, we've seen Wisconsin put out great running backs. Jonathan Taylor is the most recent one. Melvin Gordon. Now you got Braylon Allen. This kid is legit. He has a very bright future ahead of him at Wisconsin. They've got a big offensive line this year. I see him being very productive. Those are 2 of the young guns, right? Those are 2 guys who just blew up onto the scene as freshmen. This guy, a little different. You got Mohamed Ibrahim from Minnesota. He's a player that's broke 1,000 rushing yards twice. Did it as a freshman when he had 1,100 yards and 9 touchdowns. Averaged almost 6 yards a carry. 2020 had another 1,000-yard season. 5.4 yards per carry, and 15 rushing touchdowns. He was primed for a big year last season, and he got off to a great start. 30 carries, 163 yards, and 2 scores against Ohio State in their first game of the season. But suffered an injury, was out the rest of the year. He is now back, and for his last season at Minnesota. Out of all these running backs, I think it's possible that Mohamed Ibrahim is the most productive, other than maybe Braylon Allen. I would say it's close between those two. But Minnesota, under PJ Fleck, he's an offensive-minded head coach. They got another big offensive line this year. Tanner Morgan is back at quarterback for his 11th season at Minnesota. And the center of this team should be Mohamed Ibrahim. He's their best player on offense. So I'm really going to watch out for him this year to see if he has, not a breakout year. We've seen him. He's already broken out at Minnesota. He's a well-known asset for them. But is this going to be the year that he kind of takes it to the next level, right? And we see him hit 12, 13, 1,400 rushing yards, and he gets back into double-digit touchdowns again. That's what I'd be interested to see. Physically, he's probably topped out. Developmentally, I believe he's almost 24 years old. This will be his 5th year at Minnesota. But he's a bruiser. He's a hard runner. Mohamed Ibrahim, primed for another big year. And then you go over to Michigan, where you've got the best running back duo in the Big Ten between Donovan Edwards and Blake Corum. Last year, Michigan was the best team in the Big Ten at running the football, one of the best teams in all of college football at running the ball. Hassan Haskins is gone. He had a monster year last season for the Wolverines, but here comes Blake Corum to take over as their primary running back. He had almost 1,000 yards and 11 rushing touchdowns last season, but their last 4 or 5 games of the year, he didn't see very many carries because of an injury. So he had 1 carry against Indiana, 6 against Ohio State, 5 against Iowa, 3 against Georgia. In comparison to hitting double-digit carries in every game before that, and he was pretty heavily utilized as a receiver. So Blake Corum is going to look to step up into that big role, and then you have Donovan Edwards behind him. Former top 50 recruit, number 1 running back in the state of Michigan, one of the top running backs in the class of 2021, as a matter of fact, in that same class with TreVeyon Henderson. And with Edwards, we're projecting here, right? This one's a little different. He didn't see the field nearly as often, as a guy like TreVeyon Henderson or Braylon Allen did, because he was their 3rd running back on the depth chart. You had Hassan Haskins and Blake Corum playing really good football for Michigan last season. But as the year went on, we saw him get more usage, and we started to see that Donovan Edwards is in the body of a 3-down running back at about 5'11", 210 pounds, but he's got the skill set of a wide receiver. The guy is an incredible receiver. It's just a natural gift that guy's got. So the way that Michigan's going to use Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards is going to be really interesting this year. That right there are 5 running backs that are all studs. All of them are studs. They're going to be competing for all Big Ten. They're going to be fighting for All-American status, as a matter of fact. And that's not even taking into account some of these other teams. You take a look at, say, like Penn State, who they have Kayvon Lee. He's got a little over 900 rushing yards on his career at Penn State. He's taken over for them. But you also have Devin Ford and Nick Singleton, who was the number 1 running back in the class this most recent recruiting cycle. He's there as a freshman now. Illinois, Chase Brown. He was a 1,000-yard rusher for Illinois last season. Broke just over 1,000 yards, 5.9 yards per carry. So there's a lot of really good running backs this season. And I'm not saying that there aren't good running backs across the other conferences, but that's not the point of this video. There are other good running backs out there. In the SEC, Georgia's got a good collection of good running backs. You got Gibbs, the transfer from Georgia Tech there at Alabama. Zach Evans just transferred to Ole Miss from TCU. He's a former 5-star out of high school. There are good running backs down there. Travis Dye out in the Pac-12. The list goes on. I'm not going to name off every running back in college football. But the point is that I really don't think there's a conference that is as deep at running back as the Big Ten this year. And that's not unrealistic. Again, the Big Ten has a long history of really good running backs. But this year in particular, I think that gap is even wider than usual. And the beauty of it is, you've got these running backs that are going to be there at least 2 more years, 3 more years. With the exception of, like Mohamed Ibrahim for Minnesota. This is going to be his last opportunity to try and impress before he presumably, tries to make it with an NFL team. With that said, I just wanted to present the names, the numbers to you guys. I'm not stacking them up with the other conferences. I'm not throwing all the numbers up there of other running backs. Like I said, there are good running backs out there, but I promise you, the no conference in college football for this season is as deep as the Big Ten when it comes to their starting running backs. And what's interesting is that walking into last season, the running back group for the Big Ten was actually a big question. We didn't know what Kenneth Walker was going to do at Michigan State as their presumptive starter there. Trayvon Henderson, freshman for Ohio State, didn't know what he was going to do. Braylon Allen was the backup running back there in Wisconsin, and eventually he forced his way onto the field. Who would have thought Michigan was going to run the ball 1,000 times last year with the best running back duo in the conference? But by the end of the season, a lot of great running backs came out of that, and now you have a lot of those guys returning for this season. So the running backs room in the Big Ten is deep. And if I had to make my pick for, I think, who will be the best of the bunch, I'm going to have to go ahead and say Braylon Allen as of right now. Kind of an easy way out. Trayvon Henderson's a great running back, but they like to throw the football at Ohio State. For this year, Braylon Allen, though, at Wisconsin, he's going to be the center of their offense. Wisconsin, of course, long history of running the ball and producing great running backs. So I think Braylon Allen's going to be the best of the bunch there, but time will tell. So again, thank you for listening, everybody. I really appreciate it. I just wanted to drop this out there and kind of float it out to everybody, see how they feel. Let me know in the comments, what conference do you believe can compete with the Big Ten in terms of that title of having the best running backs in college football for this season. Let me know if I'm right or wrong about any of this. And let me know if there are any other position groups that you'd kind of like to see. What conference has the best wide receivers for this year? What conference has the best edge rushers? And maybe, if people like this video, I'll push another one out similar to this one. So, again, thank you for listening, everybody. I really appreciate it. Please like and subscribe. It helps me push my content out there to more people. And have a good one.